doing is we're recording this, so we make this available after the event. And as the core focus of this event will be, the introduction to the policy before we go into the projects and discussion, I just sort of state that anything that we highlight on policy is, derived from our sort of expertise and research, but we aren't lawyers. So if you choose to follow up any of the, advice given or information given, that is at your own volition. So that's down to you guys. So I think maybe I'll move to the next slide if I'm able to. Yeah. Do I have control, Virginie, or if not, I'm afraid you'll have to move the slides. Maybe it's easier if we just agree that you move the slides on a next slide basis, and that will be true for all speakers. If you could just let Virginie know, when you want to move to the next slide. So. The agenda for today is an introduction by Annick to the Just Fashion project, and then also an introduction to EcoSystex. So see, I still can't say it, Cytex. And then we'll go into an overview of policy and regulations. And as we all know, there's a lot of activity either recently passed or in train. We'll then have a comment from ITEX. They're doing a study, particularly around the JRC preparatory study, but they will give us sort of some additional verbal comments. We then have a series the goal is to sort of finish this at 1 o'clock CET for everybody's time. So without further ado, I will pass across to Annick and to introduce the Just Fashion project.
Yes, thank you very much, Martin. Indeed, I will present shortly Just Fashion, the Horizon project. I'm Annick Schramma from the University of Antwerp, and we are the leading partner of the consortium. And very happy to collaborate, of course, with Martin and Virginie, who are our partners, and also with EcoSystex. That's our partner of today. So the Just Fashion project, as I said, it's a Horizon project. And yes, what we want to respond to with our project is, of course, the problem, the systemic problem in the fashion industry, because as you know, all know, it's one of the biggest industries in the global economy, but also one of the most polluting one. As you get, the numbers probably, but it's the 7th largest global economy, and it employs over 75 million people worldwide. So also within Europe, we see that fashion is a big employer, with 5 million people directly employed in the fashion value chain, and over 1 million people employed in high-end industries. So that is the problem. It's a big industry, but it's also one of the most polluting one. So therefore we applied for this project, and with the Just Fashion project, we want to focus on small and medium-sized enterprises, because there is not that much support for the sustainable transition of these small and medium-sized enterprises. So what we try to do with this project is together with 20 partners, so 4 universities and research institutions, 7 industry and business support organizations like Flanders EC, but also the European Fashion Alliance and other ones in other countries. In each partner country, we have the supportive organization, what is really nice also for the project itself, of course. 3 development and policy agencies, and that's crucial for the project, 6 fashion companies, SMEs, and they are pilot cases within the project. So it's really a project that we work together, co-create together with these pilot cases, and new tools, new instruments in order to make this sustainable transition happening. Next slide, please. It's a 3 years project, so it's a very short time. And also, as you know, also the policy is really evolving every month, every year there are new developments. So in one way, the timing is very good, but at the other hand, it's also waiting sometimes for the newest developments in order to really align with European policies and national policies. So what do we try to do? We try to develop a new sustainable index, the FISI index. And yeah, we developed through the Delphi method a list of indicators that will be tested in the following months. Besides that, we are also going to look at the business models of the pilot cases and see how we can make them more circular. So also there, we will support them in this transition. Each pilot case will also focus on a different aspect of circularity. For example, resale, the introduction of the digital product passport, but that is a challenge, as you know, because we have not yet clarity about that, but nevertheless. So there are different aspects of circularity that will be applied within the different pilot cases. Then we also want to look at the current instruments and tools, because there is already a lot available for making the value chain more circular. And so we made already a mapping of the existing instruments, and then we are looking how this can be put together also and to be improved. Besides that, we also did already a climate risk assessment and a maturity test of the different pilot cases. And so in that way, we are really preparing the pilot cases and, of course, the broader sector of SMEs in fashion to this sustainable transition. And then finally, we are looking at the policy regulation, and that's also the topic of today. And we will develop an AI tool that can be used by the SMEs in order to really be updated with the newest regulations, because that's one of the biggest challenges also, how to see how they have to align and how they can apply this new regulation into their business model. So here you see the 6 pilot cases. They are well spread over Europe, from Germany, Macedonia, Belgium, Spain, Italy. So yeah, and they have all different kind of characteristics, and that makes it interesting. Also, if we want to roll out and to spread the different instruments that we are developing. So here you can find through the QR code more information about the project. And also, maybe I didn't say that, but the overall budget for this project is around 4 million euro. So I think this is a big challenge, and we hope that the instruments and the tools that we are developing will be used over Europe by as many as possible SMEs. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Annick. And over to Camille, is it? Camilla, sorry, Camilla.
Camilla, yes. Thank you so much, Martin. Thanks a lot for having me. I'm very glad to introduce Ecosystex to all of you, even though I do see quite a lot of familiar names. So I suspect that some of you will already know what I'm going to tell you about, but please, Virgin, let's dive right in and let's move ahead. Next slide. Just before explaining what Ecosystex is, I would like to give you a couple of words on the facilitator of Ecosystex that I'm also representing today, the Textile ETP, which is the largest community of textile research and innovation professionals in Europe. And essentially what we do in terms of Ecosystex is I like to say we provide the platform so that the projects can really collaborate and leverage that platform. Essentially, at the Textile ETP, our objective is ensuring the long-term competitiveness of the EU textile and clothing industry through collaborative market-oriented research and innovation. We have a small team based in Brussels, launched a good 20 years ago as an industry-led initiative, and by now we work as a nonprofit organization. We have more than 250 associated member organizations from all across Europe. We run innovation hubs and communities such as Ecosystex, which have over 150 member organizations, and our whole network is actually is more close to 2,000 connected experts, just so that you can see why it made sense for us to facilitate Ecosystex. It really aligns well with what we are trying to do in the European textile sector. And now we can move on. Please, Virginie, to the next slide. So what is Ecosystex? It is indeed a challenge to pronounce. We also took many weeks and months before we got comfortable with this, and even more so with the longer name, which is the European Community of Practice for a Sustainable Textile Ecosystem. But by now we got used to it, and what it actually means, it is a network of European funded projects that are all active in textile circularity and sustainability. And what Ecosystex came to life to do, so what our goal is, really to create a permanent expert community, because we know projects come and go. We would really like to create something long-term for the experts who work in these projects, and we would like to provide a central knowledge hub for practical application of EU-funded science, technology, and skills development for the textile sustainability and innovation sector. To highlight some key figures about Ecosystex, it was launched back in 2023, January. By now we have over 70 member projects, which represent a total budget of 445 million euros. So that's a big number that we are very happy to see. We have more than 440 registered experts in this network who work together across 8 working groups. We also have bi-monthly public webinars that showcase the progress that these projects are making. We also have one annual conference a year where we once again showcase, but we also meet in person, which is really important in this digital time. The main activities within Ecosystex are inter-project collaboration, engagement with policymakers, and dissemination. And I will tell you a little more about all these activities in the next slide. So Virginie, please, let's move on. Yeah, so before diving into the activities, just a quick glance at all the projects that are part of Ecosystex. I think it's quite an impressive slide, and Just Fashion is just in the upper right corner there. So we are very happy to have the project as well in the network. Next slide, please. So first of all, I mentioned inter-project collaboration within Ecosystex. That's why we created our working groups. You can see 8 of them here, which is the total of what we have to date. We have 3 HGs, which are in green. These are the horizontal working groups, which are applicable for all our member projects. And we have 5 technical working groups, the TGs, where we have a more specific scope and technical topic in which the project experts can collaborate across projects. So essentially how it works is when a new project joins Ecosystex, they can really see what topic is relevant for their specific scope, and they can send their experts there to really exchange with other projects, share what they are doing, share questions, concerns, challenges, and really put their brains together and hopefully come out with some good ideas and solutions. Next slide, please. The engagement with EU policymakers is also an aspect of the Ecosystex activities. We have, in general, very good working relations with the CB Joint Undertaking and the European Commission's Research Executive Agency, which is very welcome support from their side. Other than that, occasionally we consult the expert community within Ecosystex for scientific input to inform policymakers. A good example of that is what we did back in the first year of Ecosystex when we created an input paper on research gaps and needs, and then presented it to policymakers. Very good response and high interest to that. Other than that, we have a website, ecosystix.eu, where publications and policy briefs from our projects are published, and the new initiative is a cross-project review of policy deliverables. Next slide, please. We have a wealth of resources that are published on, once again, the ecosystix.eu website. So I really recommend you to have a look at that, but you can also follow Ecosystix on LinkedIn and on YouTube. We have a mailing list which informs you of all the project news, but also all the upcoming events, including the bi-monthly webinars that we organize that I already mentioned. We have a database of project publications on the website. You can rewatch past public webinars as well. And if you are a member of other EU-funded projects that fit the scope of Ecosystix, so that are EU-funded, focusing on textile sustainability and circularity or skills, then you can request a membership for your project as well. All the information can be found on the website. Moving on. Just to quickly highlight two activities that are coming up. Our CESOTech project, which is one of our funding projects, has a webinar, Sustainability Forum webinar on the 9th of December, and the Ecosystix Insight series, once again, that I mentioned, bi-monthly webinars that we have, is coming up on the 23rd of January. Registration is always required, but all of this is available on our website. And I think with that, I arrived to the end of my presentation. I hope I didn't run over too much. If you have any questions, do not hesitate to reach out on the email address that's on the slide. Thank you very much. Back to you, Virginie.
Thank you very much. Right, let's move on. So Martin, the floor is for you now. Is Martin here?
Do the basic thing of turning
yeah, okay.
microphone back on again.
Okay.
So again, Professor Martin Charter from Centre for Sustainable Design at UCA, the partner focused on policy and standardization within the Just Fashion project. I have a background or variety of backgrounds, including following European environmental policy since the mid-90s, particularly in the electronics sector, where I see a lot of similar issues emerging from my experience there that relate to this sector. I also head up the Circular Economy Committee for British Standards Institution, and heavily involved in a lot of the circular economy activities for within ISO and SEN. So, so the background again. So what I'm going to do is I'm not going to speak to every point in these slides. We will share the recording. So again, for time, I will, in some of these slides, I will just make some sort of key points really, so that we can try and keep to time. So I really think started to sort of change actually in 2015 in the Commission, when the first Circular Economy Action Plan was launched, which really set the train of the Commission to start to sort of set out, sort of its thinking in terms of broadening its activities, not just in terms of circularity, but in terms of looking at new sectors. And it sort of touched on perhaps then looking at clothing. Essentially, within that, it also set a standardization mandate to develop initially a series of product circularity standards around for the energy-related product sector linked to the Eco-Design Directive. So these were standards related to, repair, durability, etc., etc. And Karen perhaps will pick this up a little bit when she follows up on the standardization bit. So essentially in 2019, the Green Deal was published, and then in 2020, the second Circular Economy Action Plan was launched. And really the key points that are relevant for today was it actually put forward the EU strategy for sustainable and circular textiles, which really for the first time set out, the Commission's vision related to the sector, but also setting in train initially under the Sustainable Products Initiative, the basis to set up the ESPR regulation or framework regulation. Other things of note that are happening at the moment under the 2023 Green Deal Industrial Plan, the Critical Raw Materials Act, but that's primarily focused on electronics, critical raw materials linked to technology, but also the Circular Economy Act that's expected in 2026. Next slide, please. So, key element of Circular Economy Action Plan for the purposes of the clothing and textile sector, it really set in the train, but the Commission's intention is to make sustainable products the norm in the EU, giving the potential to regulate and set policy in all products and all sectors, and really highlighting that textiles, clothing, and fashion were going to be part of the core initial sectors it was going to focus on. Next slide, please. So the textile strategy was launched in March 2022 and really sort of set out a vision around sustainable and circular textiles. I won't go into the detail of this slide. Next point. However, the key point was this was a non-binding strategy. It was not a regulation or a directive. It was a communication. So really, it set up the sort of the backbone of and the background to the development of the policy. But the key point here was it was the first time that the Commission really sort of looked at something comprehensive for this sector. Next slide, please. I'll mention briefly the Circular Economy Act because this is the sort of the new game in town in the Commission, backed by Ursula von der Leyen, and really it's looking at a sort of a single market directive, really to double material use by 2030. To really expand recycling, reuse, etc., and to reinforce and strengthen secondary raw material markets. It's at this stage a little bit unclear of what the implications for this sector are. Certainly, they've highlighted electronics is one of the sectors they're looking at, but it's again something to be keep on the radar. Next slide, please. So again, consultation was published. There was about 250 responses to that, and legislation is expected in Q4 2026. Next slide, please. So what I'm going to do is go into some more detail on the Eco-Design for Sustainable Products Regulation and the components within it, because some of those elements may be less clear to people. So the ESPR was launched in the 18th of July 2024. Really the goal, as highlighted there, to really drive sustainability into potentially all products or markets, bringing in higher levels of circularity alongside the existing focus on energy efficiency. The goal was also to build on the success of the Eco-Design Directive that really focused on energy-related products that has driven down energy consumption across the board, but also at an individual product level. So the Commission viewed it as a successful piece of regulation. Next slide, please. Again, so for those who are latecomers to the event, we are recording the webinar and we will share the recording. We won't be sharing the slides. So again, the ESPR has various core themes. I won't state these in detail, but it's to move away from a linear economy, to harmonise, etc., etc. So next slide, please. So some of the key points are the scope extension. So it expanded by sector, as we've said, in moving to other new sectors, not just energy-related products, but also to expand the potential requirements that the Commission may align regulation to. As I highlighted previously in the Eco-Design Directive, the focus there was on reducing energy consumption. This framework regulation has given a much wider scope that I'll go into more detail. So there are 5 components to ESPR. There are the product regulations that you may have, many of you would have heard of: digital product passport, ban on destruction of unsold goods, green public procurement, and substances of concern. A number of these are clearer than others. Sitting behind this, every 5 years, the Commission will publish a working plan, and that really sets out the plan for the implementation of the different actions within the ESPR. Again, I won't go through the detail of this slide, but it's a core document if you're interested to review, about 15 to 20 pages. Various timelines are stated in various European information in relation to the ESPR, but already some of those timelines are falling behind. So there was a goal to have some clarity and some regulation on digital product passport, but that is now being knocked back to 2026. That's, directly heard that from the DG Environment, but also they had this publication of a DPP registry for service providers. Again, that is going to move back into 2026. Also, there was a stated goal of publishing an act on unsold goods, but again, we've seen no evidence of that and as yet, and no further updates. So again, part of the challenge that perhaps many of you are facing if you're looking at the regulation is really getting clarity on dates, because you get different dates stated in different sources, and there's various delays happening. One of the things that we can be reasonably certain from our research and our contacts with policymakers and others is that the first delegated act for textiles and clothing is targeted at Q1 2027, with the delegated act being implemented at member state level by mid to late 2028. Next slide, please. So essentially, again, I'm not going to go through all the details on the slide, but essentially the ESPR and the different components of ESPR cover essentially all those that place products on the market, whether they be a manufacturer, an authorized representation of a manufacturer, or importer. So the key point is, if you are placing the product, the market, and you are then there will be compliance requirements in different parts of the ESPR, particularly in terms of the product regulation. Next slide, please. So some of the implications for the sector from the product regulation, what I guess we're suggesting here is certain actions if you have SMEs within your network that are going to be covered within your projects, and if this is an area that you're exploring, there are various steps that SMEs can start to take to prepare themselves for the regulation. Some of the regulation, as we say, is already in train, and we'll go back into that, but some of it is in the future, if you like, but it is coming. So particularly from the product regulation, really for SMEs and even larger companies that may not be so aware, is to start to sort of understand the implications of incorporating durability or repairability into clothing design and development. So really starting to explore what you're doing, what might happen, even open up conversations with suppliers. Within the digital product passport, back one please, really it's really, again, a lot of this is very similar, starting to track data around your products, across the life cycle, and making sure you're you understand the life cycle impacts of your products and where you can collect relevant data. Ban of destruction of unsold goods. Again, I think something is likely still to come in. It's slated to come in. You know, France has set a precedent on this, so there are examples that one can look at from France as to how French companies have had to deal with this, but really to start to sort of identify, you know, topics around unsold and returned stock and, you know, these sort of issues. Next slide, please. So green public procurement, again, and substantive concern, both are very unclear at the moment. But again, you know, one area one could start to do is to start to sort of track, you know, if you are, for example, in the workwear market, to start to sort of track awareness of your suppliers in terms of sustainability and circularity. And again, substances of concern, you know, starting to track, you know, chemical use, life cycle impacts, and to what extent you're sort of you have systems in place to track chemical information. Excuse me. Next slide, please. So specifically going to the product regulations of ESPR, you know, as we stated, there's a framework legislation that set the scene. These multi-annual, you know, 5-year work plans, and then importantly, there will be the setting of product-specific regulations, and there will be a process, or there is a process in place for that is being, you know, in a sense, exercised at the moment within textiles and other sectors, where there's a preparatory study process. That you know, preparatory study has dialogue at certain points with an influential consultative forum called the Eco-Design Forum of about 200 experts. You know, that advice is taken, and then, you know, at that stage, at a stage into the future, once that feedback is you know, completed, then legislation is passed, and there's an adoption of the measure, the regulation within 18 months. Next slide, please. But it seems to be quite a lot of consultation going on in relation to a variety of different elements. So there's a sort of broader, specific consultation aspects that are also being undertaken in relation to different aspects of this, notably in Digital Product Passport. So key parts of the regulatory part of this, there are performance requirements, there are information requirements. And the performance requirements mean, you know, different requirements that companies will have to undertake linked to the regulation in terms of improved environmental and circularity performance. Information requirements are, you know, about communication and tracking information. Next slide, please. So unlike the Eco-Design Directive that really just focused on one requirement, which was reducing energy consumption, what the Commission have set up is potentially 16 different areas that they may draw from, you know, in relation to specific regulations. So, for example, the requirements linked to fashion and clothing will be different from those, you know, as a finished product, will be different from intermediate products like iron and steel. So, you know, although, you know, there is no certainty on this, topics like for the fashion and clothing sector, like durability, repairability, recycled contents might be, and I underline might be, some of the product requirements that flow and are fitted into the regulations. There are also horizontal measures that align across all product regulation. There is still some uncertainty over whether these two elements in terms of repairability and recycled content are purely aligned to the electronics sector. So again, this is as part of the uncertainty that we're seeing. Certain elements, you know, are still rather unclear. Next slide, please. So again, you know, and of course, many of you on the call already know this. The Commission went through a whole sort of evaluation process across multiple final products and intermediary products, and textiles and apparel came out as the, under various criteria, the high, a high potential for improvement. So that's really why the regulation is regulatory development is focused on this sector within final products. Next slide, please. There are various exclusions. So notably, seemingly in the early discussions, footwear was included in discussion, but it has been excluded in the short term. Next slide, please. So again, it's a priority sector, textiles, high improvement potential, large market shares, and large market, high environmental impact, as Annick was highlighting in the beginning. Next slide, please. A preparatory study has been in train for some time now, and this really is informing the development of the various of the regulation. And as we understand it, the study is including various clothing products, but excluding certain other products. So those, we understand it, are the study specifically focuses on products that have greater than or equal to 80% textile fiber content. So this includes t-shirts, sweatshirts, jackets, etc. So there are certain things in scope and certain things outside of scope. Next slide, please. And then this study has been undertaken by the JRC, that is effectively, at least I always think of it as a sort of like R&D unit for the Commission, involved in lots of different sort of research and development activities to prepare policy. So there's a series of stages to the preparatory study. Task 5 is where we understand things are at the moment, but our colleague from ATEX might update us on that after we complete the update. So next slide, please. So we're expecting the preparatory study to be completed by the end of this year, and then there will be an impact assessment next year, and legislation effectively coming into place Q1 2027, and delegated act will come into force across member states in 2028. Next slide, please. Digital product passport. Real hot potato, a lot of confusion out there. Just starting from the beginning, there is effectively, crudely, a massive generalization here. There's EU DPP, so this is potential regulation and standards related to digital product passport, and what some others are referring as to digital product passports that are digitally backed information, product environmental approaches, but those won't necessarily be compliant with the regulation. So it's really important to get the language right. So effectively, it's a digital tool designed to provide comprehensive, transparent information about a product's sustainability journey. There will be, as we understand it, a delegated act, related to textiles specifically, and there will be a delegated act specifically for textiles DPP. So, there are, we assume they're going to be linked in some form, but this is again part of the uncertainty that we've identified. Next slide, please. So again, digital product passport is being picked up in a variety of different other areas, although the original, the origin of this was in the ESPR. Next slide, please. So 2 elements to this, there's the what part of this, is what element will go into the actual content of the digital product passport, and then the how element of this, which is, how will be the data be collected, communicated, if you like, the information architecture. So there's the what and the how of digital product passport. Next slide, please. There will be a process involved with this. As we understand it, there'll be a process to register, digital product passports on products or batches of products. There'll be a portal, and there will be a variety of stakeholders involved in the whole process with different sets of responsibilities. In the ideal world, as we understand it, if a product comes in at customs in, say, Rotterdam, for example, the customs authorities will be able to tap into a system and pick up on product data on products perhaps in a container that is being imported from China. So, there is a way to sort of track the environmental performance of products and align it back to the regulations. So next slide, please. So that's sort of what compliance authorities will do with this. So again, registration and portal, again, I'm not going to go through this because there's, next slide, please. Issues around traceability and accessibility, and also sort of data structure and management are key elements of this. Again, we picked this timeline up from a variety of sources. It's stating the Delegated Act for Textiles Digital Product Passport, was due to come in January 2026. Well, clearly it isn't. But elsewhere we see a delegated act for DPP to come in July 2027. So we're seeing conflicting information out there. Next slide, please. And indeed, this is a slide I picked up from the key CEN European Standards Group that have focused on this area from the chairman. And in his slide, he highlighted that the textiles DPP will be coming in sometime after mid-2027. So again, this is probably quite a reliable slide. So the issue, however, is again, what is going to be the relationship with the Textiles Delegated Act that is due to come in Q1 2027. So there's, how these two pieces of regulation going to talk to another and align. Next slide, please. As again, the key next stages are the regulation and getting clarity on dates. Also, the registration, the DPP registration is due to be set up in July next year. There's been a lot of consultation, a lot of issues around potential mis-selling of DPP compliance by suppliers, and this is an issue that the Commission is trying to sort of tackle behind the scenes. So another key part of this is standardization. Next slide, please. And we have really a set of 5 standards processes in place looking at digital product passport. We have the CEN JTT 24. We then have other ISO and IEC and IE standards and China Textiles DPP. I'll focus in on 2 of these just for time. Next slide, please.
Yeah, I just want to let you know that it's 10 to 10.
I'm very aware of the time, Virginia. Yeah. I've got a clock in the bottom right-hand corner. Yeah, so hence going through very fast. We are so basically within CEN were mandated by the Commission in May 2023 to set up a standardization process in April 24, and the process was set in train to set up a standardization process around various elements of digital product passport. Next slide, please. And part of that is setting up 4 working groups that have been operating behind the scenes to set up harmonized standards. So this is the information architecture part of DPP that we're talking about here. Next slide, please. And what we have is a series of standards that are in their final stages of development with a view to being balloted on and then published in Q1, Q2 2026. Again, this is the information architecture part of this. Yeah, next slide, please. And this slide really just highlights that the publishing of those standards on the information architecture of DPP as a horizontal basis will be targeted Q1 next year. Next slide, please. China DPP, again, I'm not going to go into detail of this, but sorry, I'm just so China as a key player in the as a key global player has set up its own approach to DPP. We haven't seen other national countries set it up. And next slide, please. And their first sector, surprise, surprise, that they're looking at is textiles and clothing. So China is already setting up approach on DPP with various standards already in development. So again, part of the challenges, and I was recently just out in Taiwan, is how are all these different standards going to be communicated, particularly for global sectors like textiles and clothing, to make sure there isn't sort of there's consistent language and communication. Next slide, please. So rules on a destruction of goods. So I think I won't go through this. Again, it's building on already regulation that came into place in France, as I remember it, and it's to ban, particularly targeted at this sector, the destruction of unsold goods and footwear. As we understand it, this has not yet been passed, but it's still on the statute book. So next slide, please. So again, as we understand it, again, there will be a general regulation and then potentially delegated, acts focused on different sectors. Next slide, please. Green public procurement. So again, an area that has been around since the early 2000s within integrated product policy. This proposal for green public procurement to become mandatory, and nothing has actually happened at a European Commission level. But again, the ESPR is reinforcing the potential to sort of make green public procurement and circular product requirements mandatory. Again, we've not seen too much further information on this. Next slide, please. So substances of concern. So again, it's quite a vague area. It's potentially covering substances that pose risks to the environment and human health and hinder, for example, recyclability. Next slide, please. There are links to the REACH directives within this that is being revised at the moment. But again, this again it seems to be unclear for us at the moment. But a key part of it, and I think linked to the ESPR, is bringing in the point of chemicals, inhibiting chemicals that in effect stop a product life extension through circularity. Next slide, please. So again, it's tracking this, keeping this on your radar, as per the earlier slide. Next slide, please. So variety of other regulation in train that it is unclear at the moment how this is going to link, how these are going to link to these different revision of textiles labeling, but also a methodology, PEV, that is particularly focused on clothing and textiles, and the Waste Framework Directive. I think we can skip through the details there, Virginie, of the next slides. So, just skip through these, I think, for time. So over to you.
Okay, hi. So I will briefly give you a brief highlight on the Waste Framework Directive that entered into force in 2008. So this one you might be more familiar. It's the Waste Framework Directive that basically is a foundational principle for waste management in the EU, which establishes 5-step waste hierarchy that you can see on this slide. And then in 2018, there was some amendment to the directive already, which one key element is that all EU member states must have a system in place for separation of textile waste collection. And so that was effective since 1st of January 2025 and put into place from that date. So what's important now is in 2025, we had a revision. So that is very recent. So it entered into force on the 16th of October 2025, which have some key principle related to EPR schemes that needs to be implemented in each European countries. So EU country will have 20 months to transpose the new revision into their national laws, and the EPR scheme will need to be fully operational within 30 months. So we are talking about April 2028. And there is an extension for micro enterprises, which have 12 months extra, so 2029. So very briefly, the revisions incorporate 3 key elements. So there is new rules for the management of used textiles and textile waste. So the revision clearly mentions that all separated collected textile are now considered as waste. And so they make a clear distinction between waste textile and used textile. So the used textiles are all items that have ceased to be waste and are now considered a product fit for reuse. And waste textile are the ones that I mentioned that are separately collected, so dropped in a municipal textile bin or taken to a recycling center, for example, will automatically be considered waste. Another key component is a mandatory EPR scheme for textile and footwear, and there is also some binding food waste reduction target for each member state. So EPR, you might be familiar, so it's basically a new regulation that makes producers responsible for the full life cycle of their projects, and it includes producer fees, where a company will need to pay a fee, usually most of the time to a producer responsibility organization to cover the end of life of their projects. And there is also eco-modulation. So I will go into a little bit more details now. So basically, the regulation precise all the type of projects that are mandatory, so included in the EPR schemes, and that needs to be included. So it includes all textile-related footwear. You can see more details on the Annex 4C from the directive directly that lists exactly which projects are involved. So as I said, the micro enterprises have an extra year to comply. So micro enterprises are companies that employ fewer than 10% and have an annual turnover that does not exceed 2 million euros. So the EPR fees that will be based on weight, and there will be eco-modulation of EPR that will be applied, and the eco-modulation will be based on ESPR project requirement. So we need to wait for the necessary delegated act regarding to the projects. There is a few exceptions, so exception for self-employed tailors creating custom garments, or also for businesses that are selling entirely second-hand and upcycled items. They are excluded from the regulation. So yeah, basically one must comply with the EU textile EPR. So the producer definition in the regulation on the Article 3 is quite broad and basically covers any legal entity who first makes the product available on the EU market, basically, and it doesn't matter which sales method they use. So it means that the rules explicitly apply to any selling technique, including distance contracts, which includes online sales. So the idea is the regulation wants to make it a bit more strict in regards to online platform. Like the regulation requires that the online platforms ensure that the third country sellers that use their service have registered and are complying with the EPR obligations. So basically, a producer will need to register and pay a fee to every country they sell to. So here I just highlight the main producer types. So we have EU manufacturer, EU reseller, EU importer, and distance seller. So that is just a brief overview. We're not going into detail, just to give you a brief idea of what exactly is concerned. And so the one who are not concerned, I've already a bit highlighted some of them. So there are the one which are, for example, self-employed tailors producing custom projects, the one that are selling used or waste projects, or that are using or that are supplying used textile or textile related or footwear projects that are assessed as fit for reuse. Next, so now there is already a few countries that have already implemented national EPR schemes, and I have analyzed two main countries that are pioneer in implementing EPR scheme for textile. We have France and the Netherlands. I will just give you a brief overview of each. So France, since 2007, already have an EPR for textile products, which also include household linen and footwear. And it was then expanded with a law that is called the Law AGEC in 2020, which also include a ban on destruction of unsold non-food products, a repairability and durability index, and EPR. So in regards to EPR in France, there is only one PRO, which is called Refashion. So companies are paying what we call in France an eco contribution, which is basically the EPR fee I mentioned a bit earlier. And so they need to pay to Refashion that will use it for example, we'll use it for repair fund, reuse fund. So you can see here on the picture here, where exactly every eco contribution contribute to. So then in 2020, there was some extension of the law, which covers even more projects. So this is where footwear were also included, for example. And there's a few exemptions, for example, products that are 100% leather, natural fur, or upcycled materials, and second-hand materials are not included. So in France, what is interesting is that they have already implemented eco-modulation bonus and penalty. So there is bonuses for product durability, bonuses for obtaining environmental labels, and for incorporating raw materials from recycling. So for the first one, the project needs to be tested using the ISO 17025 accredited labs. And then the second one, the company needs to show a certification from one of the accepted labels. So for example, EcoCert, BlueSign, Fairtrade are accepted. And based on this, they will have some bonus amount. So here I have put the exact amount. So it depends on the amount of units that you sell, the price change, and the price is per piece of garment. And then the bonuses for incorporating raw materials from recycling. So these bonuses amounts are different depending if the textile you use that is recycled by an approved PRO or if it is from an open loop recycled waste. So it can amount to 500 euros per ton or 1,000 euros per ton. Then the penalty is called the penalty for recyclability that just been applied since January 2025. And so this penalty is very straightforward for the company. They basically just need to declare that their finished products contain a specific recycling disruptor. This includes metal or plastic fibers or electronic or electrical components within the product. And the penalties are cumulative, so if both apply, both penalties are charged. And if the products have a penalty, they cannot receive an eco-modulation bonus. The one I mentioned then before. So as I said, just a declaration is enough for this one. Now in the Netherlands, it's slightly different. So it started since 2023, but has been more into place since 2025. And so here, very similar, all producers that import new clothes or household in the Netherlands need to comply. So if you put any textile directly in the market for the first time, and again, it doesn't include second-hand goods. There is also some binding reuse and recycling targets, the same in France, but I'm not going into details in this. So in the Netherlands, compared to France, there is 3 PRO, so which the main one is teaching UPV textile, which has the highest market share. So in the Netherlands, they don't include footwear, it's only textile, and the EPR fee is based on the total weight of textile that the company places into the market. So here I briefly highlighted the comparison of the two countries. So as I already said, some key elements that differentiate them is that in France, we only have 1 PRO. In the Netherlands, there is 3 PRO. In France, the scope is more broad. It includes clothing, linens, footwear. In the Netherlands, it's a bit more specific at the moment. Footwear are currently excluded. In France, the fees is mostly calculated per unit, but there is also eco-modulation fees. And in the Netherlands, it's weight-based. In France, we also have labels. So each company needs to display the Triman logo, and in Netherlands, they don't have at the moment. So yeah, now we can move to the waste stream and regulation. I think, Martin, you're taking over.
Okay, great. Thank you. Next slide, please. So again, I'm just going to really skip through these quickly. So the Waste Shipment Directive really looks to limit the export of textile waste to third countries. It entered into force in May 2024. The new provisions will apply from 26 and the new rules from 2027. So effectively, it is to try and, stop exporting, the textiles overseas, prevent illegal shipments, but also there is potential alignment with the Circular Economy Action Plan, the Circular Economy Act, to actually retain and increase the recyclability of resources within Europe. But that the linkage is to be clarified. Next slide, please. So again, I won't go through the details of this one. Next slide, please. So empowering consumers for green transition, I call this a Green Claims 1. So this actually came into force. So this is regulation, March 2024, and is going into, being, implemented at a national level. So effectively, this has come from the consumer side, consumer injustice, and the aims to, provide clear information on durability and repairability, to forbid very generic claims like green, eco-friendly, et cetera, and to include more information on labeling. Although we don't state it here, I believe that there are tougher fines associated with greenwashing, and for example, there was something not in the EU but separately in the UK from the that I believe a greenwashing textiles company was filed, a couple of £100,000. So there are teeth now emerging related to not following these regulations. So it's moving up from codes of conduct to regulations. Next slide, please. So Belgium, as we understand, as an example, has already got regulation and a process in place, and we understand there are already audits of retailers going on to check labels and messaging. Next slide, please. Again, I won't go through the details for this, other than marketing also needs to be engaged in this and made aware of these potential, making clearer, much more information-backed claims. So creative copywriters will need to be backed up by solid information. There is this proposal for something called the Green Claims Directive that often gets confused with the first legislation I just mentioned. This effectively was to provide third-party verification of labels. It's been quite controversial. It's been on the statute books, off the statute books, back on again, but it's really unclear what the situation is in the moment. There's a lot of sort of dynamics happening in the Commission at the moment with the so-called omnibus related to sort of increased competitiveness and cost to SMEs. So again, to keep an eye on this, but again, it's just highlighting on a more generic level, communication, green claims within communications is going to be sort of regulated more over the years. Next slide, please. So do you want to do this one, Virginie? Or these ones?
Yeah, so it's just here we highlighted a few uncertainties regarding to the legislation. So in regard to ESPR, so the first main one is that we are still waiting for delegated acts. So we still don't know the details regarding to project requirements. And as mentioned by Martin a bit before, in regards to substance of concern, we still like the details of exactly what it will mean, what will be the link, what will be the list of substances, and also how exactly it will link with REACH revision. There's some uncertainties we still don't know. In regards to methodology as well, it is still unclear exactly how the design or criteria projects will have to meet when, for example, how the company, once we have the delegated acts for project requirements, what methodologies they will need to use to prove that their project is durable, for example, repairable. So there is talk about repairability score, there is a PEV, there's LCA. So that is some things we are still unclear. There's a lot of discussion around this. Similarly, there is some few horizontal rules that we already mentioned, but we don't know exactly how they will apply throughout different sectors and how this will be crossed with the specific rules for each for the projects. That is some uncertainty we still have. Also about enforcement, exactly how this will be done. So we assume that it will be enforced by national authorities and things, but we don't know exactly the details. How it will be linked with other EU regulations. So as we mentioned, ESPR will be linked with a lot. For example, as I said, for the Waste Framework Directive, the eco-modulation will be based on project requirement from ESPR. But so this means a lot of delays, you have to wait. So there is a lot of links between regulations that are not clear yet and that we need to wait and see, basically, and keep monitoring. And then there is a few uncertainties regarding to DPP in particular. So there is a main one that also I want to emphasize, the one that Martin mentioned, is about the timeline. Like it was a bit strange. Sometimes we've heard from different sources that there will be a textile DPP delegated act in January 2026, which actually is not possible as the ESPR regulation does clearly state that the DPP for textile will be linked with project requirement for textile in ESPR. So we expect that it should come afterwards. So it makes more sense that it should be more for 2027. But this is something yet to monitor. But there is one thing we are more sure is that the DPP for service provider, so as what is expecting normally early 2026, but it's something to keep an eye on and see if there is any further delays. So as I mentioned, there's a link between ESPR Delegated Act for Textile and DPP Textile Delegated Act. So that is the links between those two needs to be clearer. And also, there is some uncertainty about how the DPP will align and integrate with existing and future EU regulations. So as we mentioned earlier in one of the slides, DPP is mentioned in a few other regulations, but we don't know exactly how this will work in practice. So we need to keep and wait and monitor and see how it will look like. And then a few other uncertainty regarding Waste Framework Directive I mentioned. So in regards to collection system, we still are not sure to which level it will be harmonized throughout the countries, because this will raise questions about the quality of collected materials from country to country. So it is some aspect we are not clear yet. If each country member state do have the capacity for reuse and recycling, because there is some national targets, and these are some aspects that are still unclear if really each member state do have the infrastructure, the capacity for it. Also the exact design of EPR scheme. So there is a collective through PRO, there is individual schemes. So to which extent it has to be harmonized throughout different countries. We are not clear about this. There might need for more clarification in regards to waste and use textiles. So I mentioned a few definitions, but there might be some more specific details that are still unclear. The specifics around eco-modulation fee. So as I mentioned, this needs to wait for ESPR Delegated Act as well, because based on the Waste Framework direction, it has to be linked with the Delegated Act. So we don't know at the moment. Again, in regards to compliance and enforcement, these are still some uncertainty, but the regulation says that the enforcement needs to be managed by each country. So we assume that it will be by national authorities, but we don't know the exact details on this. Again, in regards to harmonization, so I talked to you about France and Netherlands, but to which extent they might need to adapt their own system, because they might need to harmonize with other EU countries as well. For example, in terms of fee calculation, the Waste Framework Directive mentioned fee calculation for the EPR fee should be based by weight, but the one in France is mostly per item. So how France will need to maybe adapt to all of this. So this we need to monitor this. So yeah, that are the main uncertainty, and so hopefully in the group discussion we can discuss this further. So now we'll move on to the standard. I apologize for the delay in the time, and I think we can give the floor to Karin.
Yes, thank you. So I would like to tell you a bit more about circular standards in the clothing, fashion, and textile sector, and also a bit more in general. So we can move to the next slide. So the most important working group is the one from CEN/TC 248, Textile and Textile Products, the working group 39, Circular Economy for Textile Products and the Textile Chain. It was funded in 2021 because also the Netherlands had the idea to bring their national document, a Netherlands NTA, circular textiles requirements and categories to the European level, following all the legislation or legislative developments that Virginie and Martin talked about. The convener of the working group is my colleague Edwin Maas, and the secretary is from NEN, and that's Danielle van Veen. You can move on. I will not discuss this in detail, maybe move on. The working group may have started with the Dutch document, but it turned out that, yeah, with the evolving policies, it was needed to split it up into different projects. And there's some general work. For one, there was a document published together with ISO on vocabulary. And then they decided to split up the circular economy for textile products into 4 different parts. First, general principles and guidance. Then you have design for circularity, categorization of and requirements on non-virgin input materials, and then collecting, handling, sorting, and storing specifications for used textile products and textile waste. If you can move on. And then they also have some minimum physical durability requirements, linking to the previous speakers, what will be under the ESPR. So the one is for clothing, one is for workwear, and one is for bed, bath, kitchen, and table textiles. And if we can move on. This is just, again, a summary of the different documents. And the next slide, please. Yeah, if we go to some general standards on circular economy, then we have the ISO 59000 family, which have been published by ISO TC 323. These standards, I'm not going to go over them all in detail, are the high-level circular economy standards, and the hope was that they could be used all over the world. The major problem here is that all over the world is sometimes too general and sometimes in conflict with European legislative framework. So if we can have the next slide, please. Yeah, these are just the new proposals. I will not go over that. The next slide, please. Yeah, the working groups. The next slide, please. Yeah, this is a British standard. Like we already said, in some cases, then countries start to also write their own publications. This one was written even before the ISO documents. Next slide, please. But as I already mentioned, the ISO work was found not 100% suitable for CEN purposes. So a TC also in CEN was funded, CEN/TC 473 Circular Economy. And they basically look into the ISO documents and see if they can be taken over as they are, or if some additional European clarifications are needed. So the next slide, please. There, they also have 5 working groups. They're established a new one, kind of reorganizing the work into, the European framework. Then you see the terminology is always a general working group. Information sharing will be linked to the digital product passport, of course. Then the extended producer responsibility, again, a European framework, the circular business models, which is, I think, identical in ISO. And then they've also added remanufacturing. Next slide, please. Yeah. Then we also, that was mentioned a bit before, you had Senelec JTC 10. They worked on the original eco-design directive, and now they're expanding their scope to the eco-design regulations, so including also the ESPR. So their original documents were more for energy-related products, which you can find back on this slide. And then the next slide, please. So they have their working groups are also still linked to the previous work they've done, but they added also some additional ones, also the circular design. But basically, Senselect JTC 10 covers durability, ability to repair, ability to remanufacture, to recycle, the documentation, and then the circular design. So there is a certain overlap, but also a bit additional work being done in the framework of the other groups. You move on, please. Yeah, then this is just details on documents. I would like to not discuss them in detail because of time, if we can move on. So you can just click through the slides so that they will be available. Yes, then we can move on. There's also work going on in ISO and IEC. And then, yeah, standard uncertainties, if you can move to the next slide. The main uncertainty is the alignment with policies. So the content and the timing. So we know that policies take their time and standardization takes its time, but policymakers like to have standards available once they publish their policies. So you're trying to do the balancing act between developing the standard in parallel with the policy development, which of course is a bit difficult because you try to, first of all, anticipate a bit what they're doing, but you might have to do some last minute adjustments, or even when a standard has been published, immediately go into a revision to align it again with the policy once it has been finalized. So we're trying to work fast, but there's always a bit of waiting or some adjustments needed. So that basically concludes, I think, my part of the presentation.
Yeah, thank you, Karin.
Great. Maybe I'll just add 2 quick points to Karin's excellent presentation. Is that you can move on to the next slide, Virginia. It's just to note that there is now a revision process starting within the ISO TC 323 on the core terminology, standards and a couple of the others. So there's a revision process starting that will be concluded in 2028. And I think a key, element is that the JCT 10 now comes within ESPR, and again has a brief to broaden out its activities to not just focus on energy related products. So there is some sort of challenges with that, because a lot of the people involved in it are from the electronic sector, but that's the sort of strategic goal. But the Commission have now brought in a chair overseeing that who's come in from Decathlon. So I think that's sort of setting the sort of scene that of the direction of travel. Anyway, I think maybe if Simona, you've got it. Given that you've been looking at ESPR, and the preparatory study, do you have any additional comments you'd like to make based on your research?
Hello, everyone. I think you've covered very much the main idea of the study. The message that I want to convey as a very brief message is that the public consultation on these milestones that are part of the preparatory study are very important in gathering the information. Let's call it the industrial reality of the textile industry. So what I would like to highlight and to emphasize is to participate into these public consultations read the reports, even though they are very long, and have your opinion on what is happening in the reality, so it can shape better a delegated act that it's more landed on the industrial reality rather than theory. Let's call it theory. So I think that would be the main message that I think that I would like to send. Thank you.
Thank you. Back over to you, Virginie.
All right, so thank you, Simona. And so now we can move on to the round table. So we don't have that much delay. It's okay. So we can start with T extended. If Ella, you are here, the floor is yours.
Yes, I am here. Thank you, Virginie. Thank you. So I'm Ella Kärkkäinen from VTT Technical Research Center of Finland. I work as a research scientist and I'm part of the TechStended project, which I'm going to present to you today very briefly. Thank you for having me. Do you move the slides?
Yes.
Perfect, thank you. So at the top, this is the TechStended knowledge-based framework for extended textile circularity project. At the top, you see the 3 boxes. It describes our, the general aim is to have this systemic approach to textile circularity. So we develop a blueprint, which is this master plan for sustainable and circular textile ecosystems. This is based on a knowledge-based conceptual framework. This conceptual framework is a model or a tool that helps us optimize this textile routing from collection to recycling and so forth. So the most beneficial way of doing so. And then based on the knowledges we have, we will also develop and implement a real scale demonstrator. This is done with all of our partners, which you can see here on the map. So we have quite a big consortium with 20 partners from 10 different countries. And we are implementing the real scale demonstrator especially now for the last year of the project. And to do all of this, we have focused on the systemic, sustainable and safe circularity for textiles, this digital enabling efficient textile recovery, including collection, sorting and reuse, and of course, waste valorization and recycling. We can go to next slide where I tell a little bit more about the focus areas of TechStended project. So we have circular textile ecosystem as a one focus. It's the theoretical work, finding out what are these textile value chains. Then we have digital tools and technologies for textile recovery. So we are developing digital solutions for example, identification, sorting, but also this optimization. Textile recycling technologies, so developing of those solutions, and then data-driven framework for textile circulation. And this is another theoretical work that we do there in this. You see, it's our work packages. So in the data-driven framework for textile circulation, we developed this conceptual framework tool that I just mentioned about. So we optimize the textile circulation, and with the gathered knowledge, theoretical background, and developed solutions, both digital and technological, we have the demonstrator that we are implementing now. And of course, we will have to assess its potential to be replicated, and we will evaluate also the benefits to sustainability and circularity for the textile sector as a whole. And we can go to next slide. So in a little bit different words, if we translate this into pathways. So our pathway 1 is to kind of promote this knowledge and digitalization. Then pathway 2 and 3 promote the efficient textile recovery and waste valorization and recycling. And pathway 4 ensures the minimization of environmental impact of this textile ecosystem. And then I put on the last slide this this map of legislation pieces. I know you talked about many of them just now, so we are very well aligned with the same strategies and directives and regulations. I think one driving force in the EU strategy for sustainable and circular textiles is the separate textile collection that has started now, and we are now anticipating the extended producer responsibility and all of its requirements. So maybe how it will, of course, impact our demonstrator or the replication potential of it, looking at what might be the hinders and barriers. And then our work on the optimized textile routing aligns well with the traceability requirements probably set by the Digital Product Passport initiative. And I think that's it, very, very briefly.
Thank you.
That's our project. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very interesting. Next, we have Solstice. So the floor is yours.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Zara. I'm Zara from Circular Berlin. We are an NGO based in Berlin, which is accelerating the transition of Berlin to a zero-waste city. And we are part of the Solstice project. The project is targeting the 5R solutions for a textile circular economy, focusing on the 5R approach, which is refuse, reuse, repair, repurpose, and recycle. And it's a Horizon Europe project and started in May 2024 and will last for 42 months, so end of 2027. And the consortium is led by a French organization, Axe1, and we are 24 project partners. So next slide, please. So key of our project is to address the social and the technical challenges within the textile industry. And we are doing it through active demonstrations in 4 different European regions, which is Berlin. And then we have Prato, Grenoble, and the region Catalonia. And in these regions, we will test and pilot different R strategies. And additionally, we will enhance the recycling of textiles through new sorting methods and ensure the feedstock traceability using the Digital Product Passport approach. Next slide. Yeah, this is just a short overview of the 5R approach. So we will work in the different demonstrations, as I said, in the 5 different areas. Maybe next slide, you will have the slide. So here is an overview of our strategic targets for sustainable transformation for the textile value chain. So first, we like to minimize and transform textile waste in renewable resources. And then further, we will analyze benefits of a better sorting, collection and recycling. And next, we will increase the value of collected textiles through new sorting methods. And as well as develop replicable pilot systems to implement the solutions in different European regions and cities. So that we create, our target is to create replicable circular business models. And further, we are focusing on the chemical recycling as well. So target is to boost the chemical recycling to increase the usability of textile polymers, coatings, and high valuable plastics. So the focus is on polyester, polyamide, polyurethane and the project. So next slide. So here, as I already mentioned, we will pilot different demonstrations in the 4 different cities and regions. So for example, in Berlin, we started now a repair bonus system. So we will focus on the strategy repair. And Prato now launched rewarding system app, I would call it. So each region will test different approach so that we at the end can evaluate the different R strategies in the different regions. And as I mentioned, the target is to develop afterwards a replicable business system, which can be implemented in the different European regions. Next slide. yeah, this is it's a really quick overview. So of course we will fall into all the in general under the EU strategy for sustainable and circular product textiles. So we are really addressing different of this legislation landscape, I would say. So of course our target is to increase the recyclability of products through the boosting of the new chemical recycling techniques, so that at the end of the project we can set as well like new parameters for the recyclability of a product. And of course the EPR regulation is important for us. So within a target is to test within our different piloting projects business models to validate efficient activities for a circular textile economy and to allocate needs of investments using the EPR fees. So for example, in our case, the bonus system for repairs. Yeah, and of course we are addressing the digital product passport as well. So part of the project is to set up a traceable system based on a DPP, which is designed in relation to existing initiatives and allowing to prove that new created products are made from new recycled materials. And last but not least, yeah, we are looking at the EU waste regulation, and as the speaker before said, so the increased sorting is really the key in our project as well. So that advanced sorting is the beginning for the success of all our demonstrator, I would say. Yeah, it's a quick, yeah, here's that last little bit an overview of all our partners and the regions which are involved. So, yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your presentation. Now we can move to waste to textiles. So, Carly, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good morning, and I'm presenting Waste to Textiles. It's not an EU-funded project. It's funded by Norwegian Research Council and Norwegian Retailers Environmental Fund, and the project actually just finished. It was led by SIFO OsloMet, Professor Ingunn Klepp, and there is also a website for more information. I'm assistant professor at Aalborg University and also have been working as an independent expert for many, many years, doing practical projects with textile circularity. And I was a consortium member. Next slide, please. So the project had many work packages, several PhDs linked to the project, and I was only affiliated with 2 working packages, so I will be presenting one angle of the project. Here are the key questions that the project aimed to answer, and basically looking at what are waste to textiles, how much is generated, what do they consist of, with a special focus on synthetics, how can the consumption be minimized, and what are the economic, environmental, social impacts of circular economy strategies on more consumption and disposal of synthetic textiles. And the 5th one, which is red, which regulatory measures can be implemented and be feasible in reducing the volume of used textiles. Next slide, please. And under that work package, we were working with extended producer responsibility as a concept, and the project or that work was mainly during 2022 to 2024. And it was right after the European textile strategy was also announced. I had a chance to meet Mr. Timmerman in Estonia, where I'm from, and he said right after the strategy was announced that if there are any concerns, ideas, good research, or whatever, please reach out. So with this little team, with Ingunn, Jens, Tone, we reached out, the European Commission, and had several interesting meetings with different units on our concerns and idea. Next slide, please. So the work I'm presenting is concept targeted producer responsibility. And it's a conceptual work. It hasn't come into the law that was passed just recently. But basically what we argue is that the point of departure for eco-modulated fees should not only take into consideration the design, the ESPR parameters, but should also look into the waste and end-of-life data. Because what we see from the consumer research that Oslamet is very has a long history, clothes are not thrown out because they are broken. Clothes are thrown out very often, actually 2/3 of it, either they lack the aesthetics or other purpose in the wardrobe. So clothing become waste very fast. And if EU textile strategy has the goal of phasing out fast fashion by 2030, then how do we actually tackle that? And we argue that the fee should take into account the waste data, what reaches the waste streams, when they reach, and also arguing for that we should have production date on the labels, and with the DPP this will also be one option to identify how long actually products are used and when they become waste. Next slide, please. So that, and it is a concept, and in a way it's still it's actually very relevant because the eco-modulation criteria link that is supposed to be linked to ESPR are still under development, and it's an important angle to see actually, what is the cost and when do items become waste. And the concept proposes that it should be based on the eco-modulation fee should be based on the actual product use. So the products that are durable, are long used, have a high potential for reuse and recycling should be taxed less, and the products that low durability, have no reuse, content of microplastics, impossible to recycle, that are costly to the system, should have a higher fee. And we see some signs also now in France and Italy recently, so that direction is taking place. And of course the fee application should be applied taking into consideration the whole waste hierarchy, and not only focusing on recycling but also reuse and preparation for reuse. It's little time to explain, but thank you. Next slide, please. So there is some work. We did a small pilot study on this. You can see it on the right there, or in the middle, the Offerno, testing the model of data collection. And there is also a conference paper on this, and the report by SINTEF, where they did different calculations on the EPR fee, also considering the targeted producer responsibility concept. And there are links for these publications. And next slide, please. And the link to the EU policy, as I already said, yes, the EU Waste Framework Directive has goals. One of them is to create an economy. We all know that the end-of-life management is a sector that is about to collapse. There are lots of volumes that have no output markets, neither reuse nor recycling, and struggling with the overproduction and also the ultra-fast fashion issues. So EPR actually has a potential to address some of these challenges and create a better economy. Next slide, please. And I'm not the EPR expert, but from this work and also from work and discussing this topic with many industry and stakeholders as well, what is the voice there is that Of course, there are no targets, and the targets are really needed. Either they are missing, unclear, or unambitious, and especially when it comes to waste prevention. But also that there is a strong focus on price and not the impact, and that goes in line with the targets. And the second observation is low fees have limited impact. Also, what is the SINTEF report concludes. So will these fees actually be able to address the challenges and the needed infrastructure that the industry needs? And also, will they be able to address the overproduction and overconsumption issue? And of course, the need for harmonized EPR structures that have impact across borders is needed both within EU and outside, because 80% of our products or textiles are actually exported for end-of-life management outside EU. Lots of topics for discussion. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Very interesting. I like the last slide about the market impact of EPR. Very interesting. So let's move on to Biosus Text. Anna Karin, the floor is yours.
Thank you. My name is Anna Karin, and I work at RISE Research Institute in Sweden as a researcher and project leader. We are coordinating the EU project Biosus Text, which have a focus on developing safe and sustainable solutions for textile printing, replacement of PFAS for dewater repellent finishing, and recycling pre-processing. So the next slide, please. The main objective is to strengthen, or how to say, taking small steps to strengthen the circular bio-based textile economy by advancing safe and sustainable solutions. And we are aiming at a TRL 4 to 5 in the end of the project. So we are at quite low technical readiness level. And also to substitute harmful chemicals in the textile sector then. The next objective, this page.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, we started in June 2024. We are running for 4 years, and we are 12 partners around Europe. The next slide. So if we dig in a little bit more on the specific objectives, or where we have a focus, we have focusing on 4 technical innovations. The first one is to increase recyclable clean cellulosic material from post-consumer textile blends by removing elaston and the color or dyes and impurities. We're also digging into recycling of doped dyed fibers or cellulosic. The doped dyeing is when you are incorporating dyes and pigments during the spinning, to look into how can we recycle those fibers. And then we have 2 objectives focusing on substituting PFAS and PVC prints. The rest of the objectives is focusing on further develop the safe and sustainable by design framework in the textile sector. I realized that maybe I should have given more background about the safe and sustainable by design here, but it is a voluntary, non-legal binding, so to say, pre-market approach to guide the innovation at low technical readiness level to safe and sustainable solutions from a life cycle perspective. This is, of course, still under development. It was presented in 2022, but Biosus Text has the aim to develop recommendations and design criteria how to apply the framework in the textile sector. So the next slide, please. So you could say that, yes, we are aiming at bringing these innovations to higher TRLs with assessment of safety and sustainability early in the design phase, but also to kind of understand the data requirements across the value chain for integrating this framework that actually can maybe be acting as an underlying concept for companies to comply with the regulations and the policies that we have been discussed here today. We can go to the next slide. So my question here for the roundtable discussion, I was thinking is, I don't know how many of you that are familiar with the Safer Sustainable by Design, but it would be interesting to hear how to say it. The Safer Sustainable by Design is of course questioned. It's still under development, but could kind of design criteria, developing design criteria early on in the design or the innovations for assessing safety sustainability help companies or manufacturers in the textile sector to comply with the regulations of the policies that we discussed here today. So that was my kind of summary. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. Yeah, we can discuss this after the presentation, definitely.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Now we can move on to White Cycle.
Yes, thank you. Hello, everyone. So I'm Clémentine de Varenne. So I will be presenting the White Cycle project. So I'm working for Accelera, and we are dissemination and communication partner within this project. So White Cycle is a project on circular economy for PET from complex waste. We are working on tires, clothes, and houses. The idea is to reach TRL 6 to 8. And this is a funded, so European funded project. So we are a team of industrial partners, also research centers and innovation clusters from 5 countries. And the project started in 2022, so July 2022. And within the consortium, we have waste managers, also technology providers, manufacturers and users, of course, and then partners working on LCC, LCA, and we are working on dissemination and communication. So within this project, we are working on 3 types of waste. So really complex textile waste. So we are working on tires, hoses, and also clothing such as perfect jackets, for example. So many layers clothing, and we are working first on the micro sorting identifications, then the fiber matrix separations, then we have the amorphization step, also the enzymatic depolymerization, the part on purification. We are then polymerizing the monomers and trying to create yarns and cords from the recycled monomers. And then from the cords, we are creating a new product. And so this is a closed loop project. So we are trying to recycle, for example, textile within tires, and then at the end of the value chain, we're creating yards in order to incorporate them in new tires, for example. So we are trying to create technical textiles and recycle technical textiles in a closed loop. If you can move to, yeah, so basically this is the main step that we are looking at within this project. So we are trying to work on the identification steps for the complex textiles. Then we have created a prototype for the sorting parts. And also we have worked on the waste pretreatment in order to enable the enzymatic depolymerization. Then we are working on the monomers recovery. Then based on the monomers, we are producing polymers, then chips of polymers. And based on that, we are producing threads and yarn. And then we are trying to create new technical textiles based on that, and so produce new final complex textiles products. So, for example, hoses, tires, and so on. And so we are now at a stage that we are, for example, on the first study case, so the perfect jackets. We have achieved the identification, separation steps, also the preparation. We have done the depolymerization, and now we are at the stage of the polymer and yarn production. For the tires, we have achieved the depolymerization and polymerization steps, and we are working now also on the polymer, so the purification steps and then the polymer production. For the hoses, it's a bit, so it's quite difficult, quite challenging. We are still working on the preparation steps in order to go through the depolymerization step. And so that, yes, the link with the EU landscape. So we really are impacted by the digital product passport. So it will be very useful for the project because it will enhance waste sorting and pre-treatment, and it will be useful for traceability. Also, the part on targets for incorporating recycled materials could be a great point for us. It could drive also investment in recycling initiatives like this project. But we face challenges, and I will be happy to discuss that. And it's really about the harmonization of the regulatory framework also for the different countries in Europe. Also the part on the closed loop system, because we are a closed loop project, and it's quite difficult to also have an assessment of the old project impact and how Europe can support that kind of initiatives, and also the challenge regarding the competition from non-European countries on the recycled PET at lower prices. And that's it for me. Yeah, thank you.
All right, thank you so much. Thank you for its interesting challenges. We can continue the conversation after. So now we move to the last one at the list from Star4 BBS from Luana. The floor is yours.
Can you hear me?
Yes, now we can.
Yeah, sorry. Okay, good morning, everyone, and thank you for inviting me today to present this project. So my name is Luana Lado. I work at the University of Berlin, and I was the coordinator of the Star4 BBS project. And this project is already ended. We started in 2022, thank you, and we ended in end of August of this year, 25. And the main goal of the project was to maximize the potential of sustainability certification schemes and labels applicable to bio-based products. So basically, we looked if the schemes and labels are really driving the transition to a sustainable bio-based economy, because including different sectors for the bio-based economy, but also, of course, textile sector. And so the main concern was like, are we really going in the right directions? Are those schemes supporting this transition? And so the consortium included 11 partners, with many partners being from the quality infrastructure area. For example, we had UNI, RSP, and ISEAL, and also Better Biomass, so scheme owners. And TU Berlin was the coordinator of the project. And what we did originally, we first of all analyzed all the schemes and labels applicable to bio-based systems to different sectors. And then we analyzed the flows of biomass entering the EU, and also we look if these flows of biomass were certified. And we also look at the impact of certification schemes and labels on these trade flows. And then we started developing, collecting indicators that then we used to develop a monitoring tool that we use to assess robustness schemes of sustainability schemes for the bio-based economy. And then we did this by applying it to 9 real case studies. And we also analyze the cost and benefit of certification for companies, for example. And of course, we provided a lot of recommendation to the EU, also, for example, different comments to the EU economy strategy updates. Next slide, please. The most important output of the project was this tool that we created, and the tool is the name of the tool is Bio-based Cert Monitoring Tool. And Bio-based Cert is a cluster of 3 projects, so including Star4 BBS, our monitor, a system for bio-based, these are 3 projects that were financed under the same call. So we decided to join efforts since the beginning. So we started in 2020, end of 22, already to work together. And we decided to join, to create jointly the monitoring tool. And this tool, as you can see on the left side of the screen, includes a database with 3 levels of indicators. So with the system level that was coordinated by our project, the content level coordinated by Sustainable Biobase, and the outcome level coordinated by our monitor. Basically, the system level was looking at the governance of the schemes. So how are the schemes developed? How are the standards developed? Do they have inclusive process? How are all the elements of verification procedure, for example? So more on the governance level. While the content level was looking mostly at sustainability indicators, so especially the area of environmental, social, economic, and circularity was, we look at extra circularity indicators. And then in the outcome level, we looked at the progress over time. So are these schemes and label really measuring the improvement that they are creating over time? And we also worked a lot on presenting the results to the main audience. There was the policymakers, but also scheme owners. They can use this tool to really check if their own scheme is really following EU regulation policies, and also if the scheme is really complete in a way and robust. And on the right side, you see in the first box on top, the first schemes and labels that were analyzed in the first pilot phase, because we developed the tool and then we applied it to the schemes, and then we got feedback and we improved the tool. It was like a feedback, continuous feedback process. So we included, for example, RSB, Bonsucro, the Ecolabel, ICC, Better Cotton, SBP, Nordic Swan, FSC, and Better Biomass in 2 rounds. So first 3 schemes, and in the second round, other 6 schemes. And after the second testing round, we completed the development of the tool. And then we also created, this tool is very comprehensive, and you can enter it in this QR code, where we created a web-based version of the tool, because the original BMT tool is a complex Excel file. So we decided to create it as a web-based tool, also to allow scheme and policymakers to use the scheme now that the project is over. And you can also find papers that are built around the concept of the monitoring tool. And regarding the textile sector, we applied it to these 5 schemes included in the other box. So, for example, Green Button, Better Cotton, Organic Cotton, and GTS standard. Next slide, please. So looking at the link to policy, of course, this project fits a lot. Let's say the background was the Green Claim Directive proposal. There was now it's like being maybe withdrawn, still on, as we heard before today, is still in the side process. And basically we are fighting greenwashing. So we are making sure that the schemes and labels are robust and effective, and that are providing to the consumer the right information based on evidence. So we are also, of course, addressing the empowering consumers for Green Transition Directive, and many other, all the directives that are linked to companies to provide sustainability certification, for example, the CSRD. And of course, to design the indicators, we had to look at all the policies existing. So, for example, we look, of course, in general, the European Green Deal, but the ESPR, but also, for example, the Circular Economy Action Plan, but also specific law, for example, the EU Climate Law, the EUDR for deforestation, and the Farm to Fork Strategy, just to give an example. And one main result of the assessment was, for example, the circularity indicators are not covered a lot from these schemes yet, and this is a bit of a problem. So, but we also engage a lot with the schemes, and there is a willingness from them to, of course, engage more and to include more circularity indicators to be compliant with the ESPR. In the upcoming months, this is what they told us. You can access, so as I told you before, you can really use the tool if you like to, and we wish to have many people adapting it. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Very interesting as well. So now we can move on to the group discussion and Q&A. So I give back the floor to Martin, who is going to monitor the discussion. You're on mute.
Yes, thanks. What I was thinking is it might be useful just to take a
Yeah,
short
it's true. We have
toilet and coffee break, and maybe if everybody could be back at 12:15 CET, and then we can sort of progress again, because there's a lot of information by everybody there. So maybe go to the loo, pick up a coffee or tea, and we'll be back in 15 minutes. So see you then.
Sounds good to you.
Okay, everybody. Hopefully most of you are back at your screens. Maybe, Virginia, we can stop the slide share so we can open it up for the... Great, thank you. What I think we've got about 45 minutes. We're running a little 15 minutes behind time, but thank you everybody for keeping pretty much to time because there was a lot to pack in there. So I think what we'll perhaps do is maybe just sort of start with a sort of general discussion and then perhaps move into specific Q&A in relation to the different projects. So if there are different specific comments, you know, relation to the different projects, maybe we can sort of tackle that in the beginning after general discussion. So perhaps if people want to make a sort of comment or pose, you know, a question or something, please raise your hand. But maybe just to sort of kick things off, I guess we're facing in this sector, you know, significant change in that the sector is now facing a lot of new regulations that have been passed. So the EPR, you know, the Green Claims 1, I still can't pronounce the very long name for it, and others. And now we've got prospective regulations. And historically, the sector, you know, faced a lot of self-regulation, a lot of manifestos, a lot of voluntary agreements. So it's a big shift for the sector, particularly if you compare that to other sectors like electronics or automotive or packaging, who really started with a lot of the, you know, these regulations in the mid-90s or 2000s. So, you know, other sectors have had sort of much more of a history as such in terms of tackling the regulations. So those regulations are obviously covering, you know, in a shorthand, we could call it various aspects of circular design, chemicals, recycling, reuse, information management, reverse logistics. So they're spanning a large area. And, you know, what I wanted to sort of pose based on your project experience and other related experience, because a lot of you will be working in the sector in different areas. You know, do you see this avalanche of policy and also standardization activities is emerging, not just on the sector, but more broadly on circularity? What do you see as the biggest impacts on stakeholders, particularly SMEs? Do you think the SMEs are going to be able to sort of tackle this regulation, you know, and standardization? You know, do you think we're really going to struggle, you know, to get compliance, you know, because a lot of the SMEs may not be aware at all that a lot of this activity is happening already, unless they're part of maybe trade associations or linked into universities or others. So they may be acting as a vacuum. And the other area that just sort of strikes me, although, you know, they engaged more and more intensely with the sector over the last sort of 5 to 7 years, is just this huge challenge of whatever it is, 1% of recycling of textiles, and this real struggle with the infrastructure, how volatile the infrastructure is. You know, it seems to be on its knees, yet suddenly we, you know, going to require a much more robust infrastructure for sorting, for recycling. You know, how is this going to get funded? So, you know, so in summary, any comments there in terms of, you know, do we think SMEs and others are ready for the regulation? You know, and you know, where are we on the infrastructure? You know, great to have the regulation, but can we do it? So does anybody want to sort of kick off with any thoughts? And please be controversial if you want to be. or not. And we are recording it, so maybe don't be controversial. But does anybody want to sort of start with a comment, you know, or maybe, you know, perhaps each project presenter could, you know, make a comment from their perspective. So I don't know if anybody wants to sort of kick off.
I can kick off.
Great, thank you.
I
Thank you
think
very
that's
much.
the easiest. I can say anything. Yeah, I think in our big consortium, we see one thing I have at least put a lot of thinking into is this, that we already see the like how it's different in different countries, because we have 10 different countries. So we have, for example, with the EPR, we have countries who already have their plans and they are implementing it fully. And then we have countries like my country, Finland, that doesn't have a plan. It's being now planned currently. But what comes to the SMEs, I think, of course, we will have to provide some tools for them, and being like you said already, they are in this kind of vacuum where there is no information coming to them. So we will have to, I think, as the textile sector and all the other industries have to be able to, and research have to be able to provide this information to them. But I think it's already acknowledged on the European level as well that, like with the Green Claims Directive, we already see that they postpone it because we don't really know how to deal with the SMEs. We don't really want to put all the heavy burden on them. So I think it's a challenge that they will have to go through all these requirements, but at least it's being slowed down in how I see it. So on purpose, it's being slowed down.
Yeah, I mean, that as you're saying, that's what we've picked up as a result of a number of issues, you know, Trump effect, the rise of the right, competitiveness, you know, impact on SMEs, all are starting to slow, or it seemed. But again, if we look at the ESPR, you know, for example, there doesn't seem to be it doesn't seem to be touching some elements of the regulation. So particularly for the due diligence and corporate reporting aspects, clearly it's, you know, there's a big set of issues and that's being sort of watered down. But we haven't quite seen that maybe impact so much on ESPR at the moment. Curly, you have any, your hand shot up.
Yeah, I did actually. It's another topic, so I put myself in a line. But so you can finish your ESPR.
Oh, right. Okay, I thought you were responding to that. But okay. So yes, I mean that is an issue, and I think there are, let's say, political drivers in that agenda, but also there is highly practical issues in that a lot of these SMEs. I use a very simple methodology for something I've worked, you know, for 20 odd years in relation to SMEs, and it goes sort of like this, called the ZBIA model, and we can sort of look at this in terms of sustainability and say, for a lot of SMEs, that, you know, in terms of sustainability policy awareness, they'll be somewhere on the line of zero awareness, basic awareness, intermediate, or advanced, with the vast majority being at zero or basic. So again, I think there's an issue there, either from a commission point of view and or a national government level, a little bit with, you know, providing the support to SMEs. You know, what sort of support will the SMEs need to actually bring themselves in compliance? And if I go back to old eco design days, we saw, you know, programs where there was mentoring, you know, coming out of universities, you know. So there are approaches that have been used in the past to support SMEs. But again, I don't know if anybody wanted to sort of make any comments on that before we go into the next topic from Curly. Oh, is that Anna Karin? Yeah, yeah. You're muted, I think. Yeah, can't hear you. Maybe if you wanted to put your question or observation in the chat, and maybe we go to Curly whilst you're typing away, and then we'll come back to your point via the chat. So if that's okay, these technology glitches happen. We all know it. So Curly, I don't know if I'm pronouncing your name wrong. Sorry, but I'm English, so apologies for that. So what's your observation or point?
Yeah, you say the name nicely.
Okay.
It's an Estonian name, so in Estonia we say Kerli, but all foreigners say Curly. Yeah, mine was, taking departure from your SME angle. My observation is the EPR, because one, of course, is the SMEs, but then there is a whole charity sector because they are the main, in many countries, they are the main actors who actually do the job on the ground. And what we have a Nordic Baltic collaboration project, and we had a EPR related webinar a few months ago. And what we also learned, like what is happening on the market now, like setting up the pros, and there is quite a bit of a mentality of this old waste management that EPR is for collection and end-of-life management or waste management, like recycling, and less on circularity, meaning preparation for reuse, prevention, repair. So all these small actors who are actually active in keeping clothes in circulation locally, they are quite concerned that what role they will play. But also in Scandinavia, the bigger charities, like if things are now, the collected items are now considered waste at the point of collection, unless they are professionally assessed on spot, then they all also become waste. They need a waste license. So the question of how this EPR, what kind of impact they will have, and on who and on what activities, and it absolutely should follow the waste hierarchy, so that we do allocate resources first on the waste prevention, the repair, preparation for repair. And I mentioned here preparation for repair because this is a field based on my own practical experience, but also it will be published soon, a project called Sorting for Rewear by Circular Economy and Fashion for Good, where we document that there are activities needed to make them reusable. And it's not just repairing. Stitching a hole is just one failure. There is a laundry, sometimes it's a spot, it's the peeling. There are different activities that are needed so that the product is still reusable. And there is also potential to capture that. Right now, nobody does it really at scale because there is no economy in this. So items become waste or recyclable or just waste items because there is no economy in preparing them for reuse. And the third observation is that setting up pros, what I hear from different, Holland, Latvia, different countries is also when producers, they are interested in low price. So there is this price versus impact. And impact is not really high in agenda in many of these pros. And when the cost is low, then going back to my slide, then what will that fee actually, what impact will it have? the law says it should help to create the economy. The EPR should address market failures of the end-of-life management. With such a low fee, and when there is a price to, race to the bottom, what impact it will actually have? Are we actually missing an opportunity to impact the whole industry? Yes. So in Holland they have these 3 pros, and one of them has applied a more holistic governance structure. So this is also something that is maybe should be discussed more. Like the pros should represent the interest of many stakeholders in the ecosystem. So lots of topics, but I would be happy to hear feedback and reflections.
Yeah, I mean, maybe I'll provide, some building on that, and if others, please also put your hand up, and then Anna Karen will come back to your question as to for the next. Oh, okay. So just a couple of things that sparked in my mind. 2 specific things is that I'm quite heavily wearing another hat or hats involved in repair cafes throughout Europe and the world, the world, and I run one, and although UK is not within the EPR, within the commissions, within the commission now, sadly, in my opinion, there is now a strong likelihood, it appears from all our feedback, that they are working on something for the UK. So the issue that, it started to spark in your mind in terms of the role of the charity sector and non-profits is, how will the change in the definitions, used textiles, etc., will it have any impact on repair cafes? Or somehow are they outside of that? There are something like 3,500 to 4,000 repair cafes in the world, about 80% in Europe, and a significant proportion of them have textile repair stations. And yes, a lot of it is, darning holes and, et cetera, but there are some more complicated faults that they tackle, if you see what I mean. So I'm wondering about, there's this sort of grey area in the sort of non-profit charity sector, a variety of different role players, this uncertainty. It's not quite clear how this is going to impact on some of those types of organizations. So that was it was something that sparked in my mind. The other point, and again, I don't know, this is going back in time a bit, Virginia, and you might have a comment on this, is although France has been quite, proactive in eco-modulation, fees, those fees, if I remember rightly, were quite low. And whether that's actually had any impact on the design and development process, they're just absorbing the fee within the price. So actually, has the eco-modulation, set at a lower bar, actually had any impact on design and development processes? So there's something that either yourself or others were talking about was, there needs to be strong enough incentives and disincentives, if you see what I mean. If it's very marginal, then there would be no behavioural change. So I don't know, Virginia, did you have any? Because you've been looking at the eco-modulation in more detail recently. I don't know if you picked up anything.
That's what I find interesting in the presentation of Carly, is that she's looked at the impact, and that's something I have not much looked yet, how much it has impacted the eco-modulation, if really it has an impact. I like the fact that you point out price versus impact, and it is true that it's still very low. So is it? And someone yesterday mentioned as well that in France, actually, there is even more clothes being sold and things, so it doesn't really solve some of the problem as well in regards to a number of projects we put in the market as well. So So yeah, but it is definitely some research to look at if the impact of this eco-modulation. But the new one on the penalty one, it's very recent. So this one, I don't know if there will be much about this one. It's just been since January. So
Yeah, maybe may I just comment?
Sure.
So yeah, that slide, the last slide where I have some observations, they are not done on research. They are based on actually the voice, what is happening on the market, and some of the stakeholders I've been engaged with, because this is happening now. So all these pros are being discussed and set up. What is France, based on my understanding, it has not delivered the expected, as you also, Virginie, say it delivered the expected impact on the products and the system and the volumes. So I'm wondering if now when the regulations are designed, do they actually take and see like, okay, what is the goal? What is it we actually want to achieve? We have the textile strategy, which is very ambitious. And then we have now these regulations are coming and laws. Is there anyone like, if we have a 10 € tax on a T-shirt, that will make no difference on anything. It will allocate a little bit of additional resources for collection, and then most likely that's it. So it will not address any of these challenges and infrastructure needs because it's just so low. It will also not impact, it will not motivate the producer to change anything. I put it very straightforward, but that's at least my view on this.
With, with a new law in ultra fast fashion in France, it's the same. We don't know which impact it will be. Like, despite all of this, Shein is still opening a store in Paris, which created some controversies. And so this fact, I think in the future we will see if really this fees they want to impose for ultra fast fashion company, for example, will it really have an impact? Or it's at the moment it doesn't seem so, but it's not yet fully implemented. So
yeah,
we'll see.
And just one observation: this weight, the fee per weight versus per item, because this is also quite important. Because if you take a woolen sweater and you take a polyester sweater, I mean the weight difference is huge, but the environmental impact of these products are different. Also, the cost of end-of-life management. So why it makes no sense to base it on weight? What are the arguments for weight? Because then you would penalize actually a natural fiber that has a long use, that is healthy, that has a reuse market, and we have technologies recycling it, versus a synthetic blend sweater, which is acrylic, very light, very fluffy, very nice when you buy first, and then after first wash, it's a waste product. So what's the logic? And I don't know if these discussions actually happen in a serious...
Again, and I don't know, it may be, and I've seen this in other areas by the Commission, broad brush approaches. So maybe, and I don't know that within the WEEE directive on electronics and end-of-life vehicle, it's based on weight. So that they're then taking that across to this sector without considering the particular characteristics of the sector. That was something that I've seen elsewhere. So that, that there may be an element of that going on. But I think it's, I think this issue of price and influence and change is a big sort of topic. Was it Ella? Was this a comment in relation to this thread or a separate?
Still to this one.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's maybe, well, it's aimed at Kerli, this question, but it may be going to the wrong address. As you said, it's not from the research directly, this estimate of too low fees. But still, how do you see it then? Because then, of course, we could raise the fee. but how do the SMEs, how do they quickly adapt to if they have a lot, like a less income flow? So I can see the big companies being able to adapt to a higher fee very quickly, whereas the SMEs will then. So do you or anybody, Martin, Virginie, how do you see then how that is there like maybe what I'm looking for, is there like estimates of what is the optimal level of a fee? How should we reach that so that SMEs won't suffer, but it would avoid the fast fashion and ultra fast fashion from taking such a big part of the market?
Can I just say?
Okay, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I can quickly comment. I mean, the conclusion that the low fee has also lower impact, that comes from the SINTEF report that is also on the slides. But your question is, I mean, it's very relevant, and that's why our argument that the fee should be based on two phases, like one is a design and second is when it hits the waste stream. Because that's when actually the cost happens. So if a SME does a very good product that will be used and loved and cared for a long time, they shouldn't bear that high fee. If that product hits the waste stream, maybe in 10 years. But if you have a big corporation and that product you sell, and after 2 weeks, or even we see products with a hang tag, a price tag, entering the waste streams, like in the municipal waste collection bins, that becomes a burden and cost for the system right there. So that's where that's why the fee should be conceptually like split once it enters the market and once it enters the waste stream. But this is a very different way of looking at fees. And when we had meetings with European Commission, different representatives, nobody disagreed. They just found it extremely different and complicated to fit into the logic of how things are done. And as you also, Martin, say that taking the we and just translating it now to textiles is extremely wrong, because it's a totally different type of product. And I experienced this as well, that the pros and the EPR is discussed by people who have no understanding of textiles, how they are used, what products they are, what are the challenges. And I think this is the biggest challenge, that we are just taking a concept from something else and just applying it. Sorry, that was a bit long.
Yeah. Did you have a comment there, Virginie?
Yeah, I just had a quick comment about the point you made on SMEs. So in the case of France, what they did, they put a different fee depending of the amount of item you put in the market. Like if it's, I think if it's below 10,000 garment, it's 0.70 depending on the bonus and eco-modulation fee. And if it's above, it's 0.70 euros per item. So that is one way that they try to differentiate and lower the fee for SMEs and bigger company.
I mean, the other thing that sort of strikes me, sort of thinking about it as well, you know, if you get some sort of bonus, whatever that might be, for, you know, a garment designed for recyclability, is that going to be based on self-declaration? Is that going to be based on some sort of process? Now, if it's based on some sort of process, there's an additional cost in the system. You know, will there need to be standards for that? So how you do all of that, because again, this is where it sort of all joins up or not, is that your SME, who may be aware or not, might claim their product, if it's based on self-declaration, is designed for repairability, and communicate that, because they maybe have to do that on a label, but then they're found to be greenwashing. So is there going to be, it goes back down to what is the capacity of the SMEs to actually implement some of the product regulations that then they might be able to gain from eco-modulation, if you see what I mean. I mean, the big companies are going to lobby against it, but behind the scenes just be preparing for it to happen. So they'll be starting to factor in the costs already, and just looking to minimize it and slow it. Again, I've seen that process before, and a lot of the large players, have been preparing for this for a long time, so they have some good understanding. So there's going to be a massive gap between the large brands and the SMEs. But the other big challenge I see on this is a lot of the large brands won't necessarily be using, don't own their own factories. So they'll be using outsourced factories in India, Bangladesh, Pakistan, China. So how are some of these requirements going to be passed down through the supply chain? Will they need to be undertaking supplier training, et cetera, et cetera? Will there need to be sort of commission setting up capacity building projects in India to fund the suppliers to Europe, if you see what I mean? Because a lot of them just won't. I just come back from Vietnam, and essentially Vietnam, within the ASEAN countries, as far as I understand it, represent about 8% of the supply base for clothing and textiles. But Vietnam is struggling to have a basic quality infrastructure. So let alone tougher environmental regulations for their exporters and SMEs. There's definitely a need for some form of capacity building, to build the skills in the suppliers, perhaps. Anyway, so there's another set of issues, but Anna Karen's been waiting patiently, and I see your question or observation. So maybe we can sort of bring that in. So RISE coordinates a network of called the Chemical Group that consists of around 120 SMEs in the sector, where practical tools are provided in the value chain with a particular focus on REACH. They experience a lot of challenges with the upcoming regulations, and especially the communication in the value chain. Hopefully DPP will decrease some of the barriers. One key element is to build trust with the suppliers. Regarding the infrastructure question, yes, money is needed to build a robust infrastructure. The question is how. So there is this 2 points at least in there around this issue that we're seeing constantly, this uncertainty around the regulations, and particularly around the chemical regulations. We don't really understand fully. We understand there are a number of regulations already in terms of chemicals in the sector. What is slightly unclear is within ESPR, under substances of concern, what additional elements will be added to that. Looking at the logic of ESPR, one of the things that's emerged to us is this possibility of looking at chemicals that inhibit circularity or product life extension, and how they might target something in that area. But we've not seen any clarity communicated on that. Also, there does seem to be some links back into REACH on this, as you're saying, but again, that also seems to be unclear. So that's again what we're also identifying this real uncertainty, element and lack of clarity. And again, if we, RISE and us who are looking at this, in detail, are seeing this, I believe we're probably on top of that uncertainty. So there'll be a lot who don't even, they've not even got to the stage that they know this is happening, or maybe happening. So it's a real concern there. So, I mean, for me, this infrastructure issue is such a huge issue. If effectively we've got, extended producer responsibility coming in through the, for the amendment to the Waste Framework Directive, and there's whatever it is, 18 months or whatever it is, 24 months for that to be, come into place, at a member state level. you know, what I'm picking up, and I'm nowhere near as close to the ground as you guys are, is really how vulnerable the recycling infrastructure is in Europe, and that, you know, some of these reuse, you know, infrastructure is. So, you know, come the date that the member states will need to start to enforce the law, you know, are we going to have infrastructure to enable the regulations to come into place? I mean, it's maybe I'm missing an elephant in the room here. That's something very obvious, but I would personally appreciate any comments that anybody might have on that. Okay, Curly. Okay, yeah.
If there is no one else, then I can.
Okay.
Then,
Yeah,
there
go
is no
ahead.
one
Go
else.
ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I think it's a very valid point, and if we look at the numbers of the collected textiles in the European Environmental Agency documents also that 80% is actually goes out of Europe. I mean, we have a local reuse, which is very low. In some countries, in Norway, I think it's just a few percentages. In some other Nordic countries in general, it's quite low. It's a little bit increasing. I know in Sweden it increases, and Denmark as well. But what is consumed as first-hand and collected, they are not circulated in our local markets. So 80% goes out of Europe. And so what is this EPR? So the EPR fee should actually go with these items to Africa, because that's where the real processing happens. And of course, the fee should first support all the steps locally that are needed to keep them longer in use. And I don't think this, I mean, a lot of what I hear is that, okay, straight to the recycling. We don't have recycling. We have 0.3%. And it's yes, there is a lot of development. It has been there 15 years. I was developing pilot projects with big corporations and Renewcell and already 10 years ago. I mean, it really hasn't scaled up. So we need, of course, more funding and more demand to scale it up, but we can't ignore the first steps of the waste hierarchy. And I think this is where the local economies, both the charities, SMEs, repair cafes, lots of these real actors who are actually doing things around that piece of garment, they need to be supported from the EPR fee. And I don't hear these strong conversations around that. There is a lot of recycling focus when it comes waste collection and recycling when it comes to EPR, and also where things actually happen regionally.
Just a couple of, you provoked a couple of thoughts, and one other point that somebody else had mentioned earlier is, for me, there needs to be somehow the joined up thinking between the EPR, the Waste Shipment Directive, and also the Circular Economy Act, because Circular Economy Act is supposed to be, you know, doubling resources circulating in Europe, you know, through product life extension in its various forms. You know, Waste Shipment Directive is supposed to be, you know, it says it's going to, you know, need to align with the two, so that will be trying to, you know, tackle this 80% issue you highlighted. So there's a need for joined up policy. Of course, in all these conversations that often emerges, but I guess how, you know, if we really are going to keep more resources circulating in Europe and create jobs, you know, reduce environmental impact, somehow that needs to happen. But I'm not sure who should be coordinating that, or if we're going to face the classic silo legislation. They're all in place, they're not joined up, you know, so that's a question and thought that's been reinforced, I think. The other point that's come out for me, and I've seen it in action, is that despite the waste management sector, elements of the waste management sector starting to use the term circularity, or in the past resource management, really a lot of the businesses in the waste sector are very conservative and very traditional. They've made money, over decades in families and, apart from the transnationals, in doing things in certain ways. And to actually shift that culture is going to be a big issue. So I think that's another stakeholder in this process is really, how the waste management sector in its various forms are going to engage in the change. Are they going to dig their heels in? Because they're going to have to invest in new skills and new infrastructure. So are they ready to do that? So that was a couple of additional points that sort of cropped up, from the points made earlier. I'm just sort of wondering for time, and I think it's going to be, some of the things that I've come out for me, or been reinforced for me from the conversation, is that it's stating that the obvious, but it's worth repeating, is just the avalanche of regulation and policy that's going to hit the sector. And I don't think some of the policymakers are aware how significant an impact that will be, particularly on the SMEs. I think the other element has come up again, is this sort of copy-paste mentality. Oh yes, we've used weight in electronics. Oh, why don't we copy-paste this to the sector? So not really taking account of the particularities of the sector in terms of policy. I think the silent stakeholders, if you like, the charities, any NGOs who are an important part of existing circularity of the gauge, maybe they don't have enough of a voice in the conversation. Maybe the policymakers just aren't aware of how vital a cog they are in the wheel. I think there was the issue of price and having the right incentives and bonuses, but also this issue of how are companies going to display that they have what's the right word? How are they, if they get challenged, how are they going to be able to guarantee that their garment is designed for repairability? Or is it just going to be based purely on self-declarations? So what I'd like to just metaphorically is go around the remaining people in the room, and just, if you would like to just make one final comment, pose one other question, that's really struck you, and maybe that's a good way just to give everybody some input. So one thing that's really made you think, one question that's emerged, one thing you disagreed with, and maybe, I see, Annika, in your microphone looks like it's showing again, but it's muted. So maybe see if you can say anything. No, you can't. If you want to add something, please just drop it into the chat. But maybe if I can just sort of go in the screen that I have from my side, and in reverse order. If DT, I'll have to go from initials. So please, hopefully you can recognize from your, DT, do you have any comments? DT?
Triton.
Okay, this is a sure way for people to drop off and go and get their lunch. But anyway, we'll give it a go. So Karin Iffinger, so did you have any comments?
Not specifically. I found this a very, very interesting discussion while I presented a bit the standardization part, but of course I also follow all the policies, and I also try to keep a bit of view over our research projects internally at Centexbel. Yeah, I think for one, just having this forum to exchange ideas and results and findings is very important, on top of maybe the specific topics we discussed today. I definitely take this work back to the standardization work, because standards are developed to support the legislations, but also to support all the stakeholders to meet the regulations. So if people have any questions or specific remarks towards standards development, you can also always contact me, or of course your own national standardization body. And then I would also like to say goodbye because I have to leave at 1 o'clock. So thank you all very much. And Virginie and Martin, I guess we will be in touch.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Karen. Thanks for your help. Yeah. So now, Dritan, did you have any comments? Dritan is silent. Probably pronouncing
no, it was very interesting. Thank you very much
Okay.
for all. I don't have comments.
Okay, thank you. So again, I'm going to pronounce somebody's name wrong. It's the acronym HP, Peugeot, Heikkilä.
It's Pirja Heikkilä, thank you. Sorry, I have been following, it's very interesting. I have been unfortunately very much engaged with the other topics on the side. So listening on one ear, but Ella is from my colleague at VTT and also working at extended projects, which I'm coordinating. So she has been kind of more engaging today, but interesting parts what I have been able to listen, but I have so many deliverables due in this month in my project, so it has been taking a little bit of my attention today.
Yeah, no worries. We all know the challenge of parallel processing. Yeah. So Lillian, did you have any comments?
Yeah, not specifically, just once again highlighting the challenges of policy and legislation implementation on products that have such a complex value chain, and also the harmonization across the various pieces of legislation. So having to understand the various components and how they're interconnected. I think that was quite, a point of relevance during the workshop.
Great, thank you very much. And Emma? Emma Bog? I'm not sure if that is a person or if it's an AI chatbot, because it looks like there's something with a recording element on hold, it says. So maybe we'll move on to Ella.
Yes, thanks once again, and thank you, Kerli, for earlier clarification. I think I missed something, but that's very good. I think one thing I take from today is this, the big question of EPR, because it's a relevant topic here in Finland, the how we do these PROs and this. And then one other that we didn't have too much time to go into is this, well, maybe there should be a standard for design already at the beginning phase to combat with the REACH requirements, but maybe also do we need a standard for this, like you